Hello, hello, hello. Working on my desk today, working on my disco ball stand, and I also want to show you my inflatable boat that I made. It is my Nabi tablet stand, and it's also an artwork by itself. And I'm putting this in here into this pocket, and then it can film what I'm doing. And I'm also going to take this inflatable boat with me outside when I make foot massage videos, because that's just too annoying. When I have it in my shoe, it constantly falls over, it constantly tilts over. So I have taken notes this time because my friend Mirka asked me to talk about a couple of things. So one is I want to drink some of my milkshake. It's very nice color also. This is whole food vegan. So there were a couple points that I wrote down here in this book. So Mirka wanted me to talk about isolation and emptiness. Emptiness as in isolation. Emptiness in life, and isolation, loneliness. So I'm going to start with that emptiness and loneliness, and that is what what this type of emptiness is caused by. It's caused by being alone, but not in the emptiness sense, not in the sense of Buddhism and meditation. So in Buddhism and meditation, emptiness is something that is very much desired. And there is already a problem with the word desired, because, and that's what Jiddu Krishnamurti and David Bohm are talking about. Once we are trying to desire, once we are desiring something and striving for something, then we are no longer in the now moment. And so it's kind of like an oxymoron. The emptiness that they are striving towards is actually a state where you don't strive anymore towards something, where you don't desire anymore. So that is a different thing, but I think it's also important to talk about that. It's very, very important. The emptiness in meditation versus the emptiness that we experience on a daily basis, the bad that's why I also made sure to write the emptiness in a bad way, because there is an emptiness in a good way too. And all of this is very, very, very interesting and fascinating to me. Very, very fascinating, and I think about this all the time. All the time, trying to figure this out in my head, and discern and compare these things, and figure out which is which, and what does it do, what is the one thing versus the other thing. So emptiness, I have a lot to say about emptiness for my own personal life, my own personal experiences. I have felt emptiness in a bad way many, many times. That's why I tried to commit suicide 2 times. It is brutal, absolutely brutal. Emptiness in a bad way is when a child doesn't get love, when a child doesn't get touch, and we carry that into our adult lives. And I tell you something, the people who have received the touch and the love and the real kindness from the mother being there, fully there, and accepting you fully for who you are. There's no yes, but, or, apprehension, or, nitpicking, or full. I don't know if this is short. Full embracing of you. Like this. You understand? Like total baby, as Jonathan Mies always says. Total baby. Literally. Total baby. Mother loves total baby. Mother loves baby totally. This is not a joke, but, I have to, I want to bring this across to America already knows, Brian already knows, my brother knows, many people know, but most people don't know. Okay, that's why I made this a little bit more clear, like with this, all embracing. Like when you embrace something, you embrace the whole thing. I don't only embrace this color here, like individually hug this color. I hug the whole thing, including the quirks and ticks and peculiarities about the person. Friedrich Nietzsche deserved to have himself fully embraced, including the mustache. He needed the girls to love him fully the way he was, and Lou Andreas Salome did, but it went only, to a certain degree. She had an affair with him, but that was its only affair. I think he also had an affair with his sister. This is just a speculation now, but from what I've seen now about him documentary-wise, it looks pretty much like that was the case. Because the sister worshipped him, and the sister kind of like lived for him, and he was her show animal, and became her show animal even more than later on when he got sick. So then she really could do all these things with him, but his ego has always been already like on the very verge of complete dissolution and deconstruction. So he was working with that. That was his modality to work with. That was the subject of his discussion. Is he wasn't sure. He wasn't so clear about the terminology, dissolution of self and all of this. But that is what he was talking about in his books. That's what he was approaching fast, in the Zarathustra, and also in all the other books that he has written. So very, very important. My goodness, the most like after the Buddha, Friedrich Nietzsche is the most important. Okay, Buddha number 1, Nietzsche second. Okay, these are the two. These are our two. If you don't want to read any philosopher at all, or just, if you're not that interested, at least read these two people. And so because this is absolutely vital. It's vital for all of us what they have to say, particularly the Buddha, of course, but And the Buddha is a philosopher, not a religious leader, not a religion instigator. Okay. That came long after he passed away. So people made that, as people always do, they make a religion out of something. Jesus Christ, for example, um, from what I have seen so far now, is that he wanted to empower people. He didn't want to create sannyasins either. So, and Friedrich Nietzsche, it was all about introspect and shred yourself into pieces. This is what most people just don't want to do, you know. And the egos get upset about that. The ego gets frightened. It's like, what is he trying to do? Why does he want me to dissolve myself? You know, the ego is like, that is all I have. And no, it's not. And also, we are all part of everything, you know. We don't have to, why do we have to set ourselves aside, apart from things, you know? Why do I have to separate myself from others? We're all in this together, in this whole thing. So isolation and bad emptiness and loneliness is frightening and awful, because we are mammals and we need touch. Okay, we desperately need touch, desperately, absolutely. I can't live without touch. I could not do it. We need touch. Our body, our skin skin cells need to be petted, and our skin needs to breathe. Very, very important to breathe. And it needs touch. Our touch receptors, you know, they need touch, gentle touch. Every animal needs it. Every living being needs this. This is incredibly important. And I also want to talk about that. Also brings me to the other subject that I took note of yesterday, because I wanted to talk about this also in my video yesterday, but my video recording capacity ended, so in the tablet it only has about an hour or so. And that's okay. It gets really annoying if I talk even longer than an hour. So, but then I can make part 2, or I can make a follow-up on this. It's not really part 2 of the one yesterday, but there's a couple of things that I still wanted to address, and one of them is that dog, and that dog situation that ties into that subject, like bad emptiness, and so many dogs and so many people and so many animals are experiencing this on this planet all the time. The pigs in the slaughterhouses, and so and it also, this story with the dog, also want to mention real quick, that was in 2007, I think it was in 2007. It was just a couple months after we got Kenny, our former dog, and I was in a conversation with Gary and Nick, and that thing happened with that dog in Nicaragua, and it was a petition, or I don't know where I found this. I think it was a petition to sign to stop any further exhibits of this artist. Vargas was his name. I forgot the first name. A horrible, horrible, horrible psychopath who used tying up a dog and not giving him food and water. He used this tying up this dog in a corner of an art exhibit. He used that in the name of art. He 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 sold that as art. He said that that's his art performance in quotation marks. And it was an art museum in Nicaragua, and it is absolutely shocking to me to see what happened there. It's a little bit like similar to that experiment that Maria Abramovich did in the Ukraine, I think it was, when I'll get to this in a moment, but 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 Maria did it on herself. She never used an animal for this, but it went to show how the people who came to this museum, to this art exhibit, how they had absolutely no compassion at all for that animal. And that is why I bring up compassion so much, because I see that most people don't have any, okay? And so what happened is, also there's so many things that tie into this. What made me really upset was there was this troll guy that hated Gary, or I think he had a crush on Gary. This troll guy, a Republican kind of guy, a fat meat eating guy, doesn't care about anything, didn't seem to care about anything. And he was constantly trolling Gary, calling him at night, and he figured out his phone number and sent him strange music and stuff. I forgot his name now. He was some YouTuber that that had a large following, and I think he was an atheist. He's an atheist, but Republican libertarian type, and kind of like a real volatile asshole, and as most people have, they have a low self-esteem. So but there was one thing I gave this guy credit for, and that was that he made a video just for that dog in Nicaragua. I was really, really surprised to see that guy making a video about the cruelty of that case and how wrong that is, and pointing that out, that completely changed my view on that guy. And I thought, oh wow, he has compassion after all. And that's what I wanted to try to tell Gary. He has compassion, because Gary got so mad at him. It's like, and that made me really mad at Gary. Why would anyone get mad at someone who points out cruelty? And it's like, if you say A, it's wrong. If you say B, it's wrong. And that kind of made me really mad. And I thought, and I think it was about that time when I quit watching Gary's videos for a while, at least for a couple of years. So, because I don't think that's fair at all to yell at someone who makes a video exposing that cruelty and pointing that out, how cruel and heartless that exhibit is, and also the people in that museum who didn't do anything to help that dog. So I thought it was good of that guy to make the video and point it out. So I definitely complimented him on that and gave him credit for that. And I think that made Gary really mad that I complimented that guy, that I said, that's great. Gary, he wants everyone to hate everyone whom he hates. So if we don't hate everyone Gary hates, then we are not his followers, of course. And then the ego hates that, What? They're not talking to me all the time? Now they're talking among each other? What? They're liking his statement? No, he didn't even pay attention to really how severe this case is. So instead, he just twists this around and say he should have talked about the slaughter farms. But this has nothing to do with the slaughterhouses. It's a separate issue that is equally pressing. Just because slaughterhouses, yeah, there are billions of animals, and this case is one animal. That still doesn't make the one animal case less severe. So I need to point this. I've talked about this before, of course. Talked about this in 2008. I talk about this again and again because I think people need to know this. And also, I don't. That's bullshit to be catering to a guru and say whatever, whoever he hates, you hate. And that's crazy to do this. Okay, we don't want to. That's what we don't want to do. Friedrich Nietzsche was specifically talking about this. Not to do this, and not just because Friedrich said it, but we should already know this ourselves, not to follow someone and love or hate everything that guru or that your favorite YouTuber or whoever that is says that. So that's what we want to get away from. And I want to make this so clear as possible. So, and also this isolation, this terrible isolation also happens because people worship people. That brings on even more mental isolation. It's like when you worship someone, and whether it is someone who is in your vicinity, whom you have contact with, whether you live with that person or that person is working with you in a work situation, whatever that is, it is never a good thing if you worship someone. Never worship anyone, okay? Never put this kind of power onto someone else, this kind of, and I'm not saying that you give that person leverage. What I'm saying is you're giving away your own your own integrity, your own wholeness. You give that away when you do this, when you worship someone. It doesn't matter who that person is. So that in itself brings on even more emptiness, and real negative bad emptiness it brings on when you worship someone, when you hate yourself, or when you deny your own abilities, when you are in denial about your own power. You give power away to someone else. That is extremely, really toxic thing to do, and it is bad emptiness. Really sick emptiness. And that's not good. That's so then emptiness in the sense of meditation is the opposite of that. That is actually, the total liberation from. But many Buddhists don't understand this correctly. So most, because, like, I don't know about all, but I would say all. I would loosely say all religious people, including the Buddhists, that are trying to practice this very thing, do not understand this liberation from other people. So they still put themselves into, and they even, in regards to the Buddha is a teacher, but don't, you need to listen to him instead of worshiping him. That is often always misconstructed. They don't listen fully, but they worship. And there's a real stark example of this happening right now in India. I don't know where it was, somewhere in India, in South India. There is this guy. He happens to be a Buddha soul, a Buddha level soul, and a real advanced individual. And not every one of those gurus and worshipped teenagers is. So this is an extreme case, an extreme situation. And so what happens there is, and I looked into this very carefully. I trust my instincts with this. I was very skeptical and cautious on this, and because I am when particularly in India, the way the people they put a person on a pedestal and all of this. But then when I looked into it, that guy really, and that's why that guy really has done. And it's not just what he has done with his body, as in yoga. He's done some pretty miraculous things. And there are things like there are some people who have unbelievable abilities. Not all of them though are Buddha level souls. Some of them they're very good at yoga and those kind of practices because they practice this all the time. But you can practice yoga and totally bypass the actual message that was supposed to be learned with that practice. So, but this kid, I don't know, he's probably 15 years old or 16 years old now. His name is Bum John. And when he was a child, he, as many of these parents do, which is very irresponsible, they give their children away to monks and they put them into a monastery to become monks. And so in his case, this is also really what he wanted to do. And so he, at age 10 or something, or 11, he had a shaved head. He started out with a shaved head, as they always do, shaving the heads. And he went under a tree and he meditated for like over half a year. And he didn't eat or drink, and he just sat there in this trance meditation state. And people were coming there with cameras to make sure that he is not cheating, and this was well monitored, and he never left that place. He never got up. His hair got longer and longer and longer, so finally started to have his hair grow all the way over his face even. And beautiful raven black hair, slightly waved, and grow all the way over his head and eyes and everything. But he only sat there the whole time in that same position, in that same yoga position. And there were other monks that tried to distract him with energy, with energetic interrupting him by sitting there in front of him meditating, which caused him to sweat. He broke out into sweat, but he didn't change his position, and he just kept on meditating. It was just causing him to sweat a little bit more. And he never drank any water. Where did this water come from? He sweated even more out, and there was no water to replenish it. But anyway, this obviously caused a big ruckus, and a lot of people, there's a lot of skeptics also, and there were skeptics there, and it didn't bother him, and they saw it. But with some skeptics, they would never believe it even if it was happening right in front of them, which happened there. And then there are some religious people who would never be skeptical no matter what. So when someone has a mindset on whatever, they are determined on it and they cling to that. And that's also the ego that does it. There's a lot more going on in the infinite cosmos than we could possibly imagine or ever explain. But like I always say, this has to do with energy. We are energetic beings, okay? And there's energy in the room, and we live on energy. And our mindsets are living on energy. And if you completely, completely dissolve the self, the ego, if that is completely without any trace left, dissolved, and you sit there in this trance meditation of being one with the infinite, then that state of mind does allow for a sustenance of a biological body. That is what happens. But it is a it's very, very rare. I mean, it's like there's just one, maybe two, maybe most three people in the world that are able to do this, to do what Bomjan did. There are some people who are breatharians. There are more of those. Not very many, but there are some. There are maybe 100 breatharians that are real breatharians in the world. Okay, but they still drink water. Bomjan didn't drink water. He didn't go to the bathroom. He went into a complete energetic connection with the infinite cosmos, with and there was an energy flow. It happened only with energy alone. So there was energy purification, there was energy exchange happen with his environment. And if anyone knows about Nikola Tesla has discovered something during his lifetime that was a machine that was able to tap into this infinite potential. And he was shut down by the Edison company, because they didn't want to lose their business. Okay, it's very simple. It is very, very brutal and very simple, with humans who are greedy and who are very, very much based on self and on measurement and on ego and recording of that what they have learned, and clinging to that what they have learned, and freezing that in, and not giving it any, and not allowing anything else. And also and with that also was easy to get the other people who cling to their knowledge, and say, even if it's happening, it can't be happening. You know what I mean? It's like they learned something else, so they have to cling to that something else. But that's just a speck of the infinite cosmos that we can learn. Okay, we can be here on this side of this thing here and not see what's going on here, or you can be here on this side of this thing and not seeing what's going on here, or so this is kind of like what scientists do. I discovered this piece here, I discovered this color, this finger here, so this is supposed to be finger. I discovered this finger is the truth, this is always like this. Okay, but you turn this around where they didn't see, and there is no finger here. Okay, you turn this around, there's no finger here either, no finger here, there's some stripes here. So this, I'm glad I can demonstrate it with this here. That's very good. This is what we humans, we limit ourselves to. We limit ourselves to, this is what I see, this is what I have recorded. That way, it must be this way. It cannot be any other way. But they didn't look behind. Okay, they didn't look everywhere. And even if they looked in more places, which would be better because it would expand us, it would prevent wars. Okay, but they don't do that either. But even if we looked everywhere, where we try to look everywhere, it wouldn't be possible because there is no such thing as everywhere. And that is another thing that is so difficult to understand, because in infinity you can never encompass everything because it keeps on going. Okay, just for that very reason, there is no such thing as everything or everywhere, because it keeps on going. But we can explore more and more and more and more as we go. And we should. We should absolutely. We should not limit ourselves to that what someone says, what a religion said, or also what a scientist said. When a scientist said something like, the universe was created from nothing, that is it's a false statement, because there is no such thing as nothing. There is no such thing as real emptiness, as in a physics sense. Okay, emptiness as in physics does not exist. There's no emptiness. There is no emptiness anywhere. And I'm using language now as, our language itself, as David Bohm and Jiddu Krishnamurti have encountered so many times, our language is limited. Okay, just to use our language already limits a lot of thinking, a lot of exploring, because the language is filled with limiting concepts and words. Like the word everything or nothing is already a very limiting concept. So it's just logical, right? It's just, you cannot find emptiness, real emptiness, or you cannot find the thing of everything. It does not exist. So it just keeps on going, and wherever you go, there is something there. If it's not a particle, if it's not a molecule, if it's not subatomic particles, then it is energy in some other way. Okay, there are forms of energy even in a seemingly vacuum place, in a vacuum. There is energy in it. Even in every vacuum coordinate space in the infinite cosmos, in every, and that's why I say it makes it difficult to discuss, because of our language. We have to use everything as a figure of speech, basically. I have to use in every space in the coordinate system, but it's an endless coordinate system, right? So that's why it is difficult to, it makes it very easy for a hater to say, yeah, but you're contradicting yourself, and which Jiddu Krishnamurti was accused of course, by his hater, his most ardent hater, which was U.G. Krishnamurti, who was initially his student and who wanted to surpass him, which is ego. It's always ego. Yeah. So Yuji didn't even see that he was coming from his own ego. And that's why Jiddu Krishnamurti said, because Yuji wanted to find out from him how he could gain enlightenment. The question alone comes from the ego. How can I obtain enlightenment so I can have power over others? That is the ego. The ego is very, very smart with that kind of stuff. when Paul says that, when I say to Paul or Gary, for example, or many other people, when I say to them, why do you have to be aggressive about it? Yeah, but it's because they are, and they said this. And see, it's the ego. The ego is aggressive. The ego wants the power. It is the ego. And when we introspect and when we become very clear about this, then we see, yeah, it was my ego. Okay, too bad. Yeah, I gotta work on that, man. And I want that. I want people to get to that point where they can see this. It was my ego. Oh my gosh, and I didn't even notice. My ego tricked me again. I want people to get to that point where they can figure this out. It was the ego. And when we realize it was just the ego, then we can relax and breathe and say, okay, I gotta really introspect here now. I don't want that. So let me dissolve that. Let me deconstruct that right now. See, all of this ties in with one another. That's why it makes it very difficult actually to talk about this, because there are so many things that tie in with one another. They tie in like this, like everything is like a ball, like it's like a brain itself, So that's why all of these things and all of these subjects tie in with one another and have something important to say to it, something important to contribute to. So I'm not changing the subject, which I'm accused of. And my husband always likes to accuse me of that, and he likes to tell me that I mislead people. But I watched an amazing interview yesterday. A German guy from Berlin, a German reporter, journalist, or I don't know, host of a journalistic institution. He interviewed Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is the owner of Amazon and the richest man in the world right now. So everyone wants to interview Jeff Bezos also, of course, because give me the secrets to your success. So everyone wants to basically know how he breathes and feels and does anything, because they're hoping that to elicit some kind of secret recipes for their own lives. But anyway, Jeff Bezos said something very, 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 very important. He said, don't be afraid to be misunderstood. If you want to bring something new to the world, don't be afraid to be misunderstood. That's what he said. You have to be fearless, and you have to be willing to be misunderstood by many people. And it's a logical thing. If we bring some completely new concept, if I tell you to look at this side here and not be dwelling on this side here, okay? I'm bringing a new concept to you, okay? And either side of this here is positive, so it is not. What I'm trying to say is some people dwell on something negative, but they're not willing to go around the corner to see that the whole thing is not negative. This is green here, and this is kind of purplish, right? But if you turn this around, I go all the way around the big picture here. There is no purple in here. This is pink and happy and all of this. And purple is also beautiful. I'm just saying this now as in order to demonstrate this, right? I love all colors. And so people, they don't go around the corner to experience the pinkness of the situation. Life, we can, as Tony Robbins always said, and I'm guilty of this myself. Tony Robbins always said, some people freeze in the winter and some people go skiing. Well, it's not my favorite quote or favorite analogy, because I'm against skiing. They're destroying the environment by creating ski slopes. So I am against any of these exploitational things. But what Tony Robbins is trying to say is, some people are stuck in misery, and some people make something amazing, basically. And so Jeff Bezos, he's only 1 year older than I am. He is, I'm so grateful for him being there. To me, this is absolutely incredibly amazing to see this. There is someone like this exists too, someone who, and I don't know him. I don't know everything he does. I wish I could know him. I wish I could give him some encouragement for becoming greener and for doing greener things. And yeah, but I think he is definitely looking for the best solutions, also for the best green solutions. For he is interested in finding the best solutions for everything that, pertains to life and thriving and health and happiness, for all living beings. So I believe that is what he's about. Some people accuse him of not being green enough. So if I could meet him, I would tell him, let's make a website together. That is better than Facebook, and that promotes green energy, and that is good for people, good for their brains, good for their minds, that encourages them, and where the haters are screened out better, and where we can help the haters, feel better, and also, for recycling, for all kinds of things, to bring composting and growing your own greens to the whole world, to make the whole planet recover. For that we have to completely reform it, and we need to do it now. It needs to be done right now. That cannot wait. That cannot be put on some kind of back burner. That is pressing right now. People all the way around the globe. I told a guy in Africa just the other day, said you need if you want to make the world better, then you have to do it. It's in your hands, I told him. A young kid. So, and he thought that was good, that someone would tell him that. Because no one has ever told him that. People, they give them money and it ends up in the hands of mafia people that will never share it with their own people, and they will just enrich themselves, and then the people in the villages, the poor people, they don't get a penny from this. But if you tell them how to fish, in the metaphorical sense, then you help them for life. You didn't only help the mafia people that are hawking that donation money, but you helped everyone there. So, and that's what I want to see. I want real empowerment. I want people to be empowered. I want education programs to go into the third world, telling people how to live a sustainable lifestyle and so on. That's empowerment, and that is complete fullness. That is totalness, that's fullness, that's wholesomeness. That is the opposite of the bad emptiness. Bad emptiness is unempowerment. That's what that is. Total unempowerment. So what that artist did to the dog, that is bad emptiness. The dog, he let the dog starve to death in Nicaragua in an art exhibit. And that is total bad emptiness. That is isolation. That is total horror. And he also didn't let people pet the dog. And so it is absolute horror. And not petting someone, not having the touch is an absolute atrocity. And that is what's happening to most people. And they're doing that again, then in turn to the animals. They put their neurosis then onto the animals as well. So those are the things I needed to talk about. It's very, very important, you know. So yeah, and the male ego also is, that subject is a very, very important thing, because as I said many times, men really suffer the most. And I'm not saying this as a put down or to feel somehow elated over this or anything. No, I see it. Okay, it's happening. It's happening in front of my eyes. I see what's going on. I've talked to many men. I talk to men from around the world every single day on Facebook, in comments, in messages, and so on. And also sometimes in chats, sometimes on YouTube. So I see what's going on. I also watch other people's videos and I read other people's blogs. Okay. And there's another woman who also wrote a very, very important blog about this, about the unempowerment of men and about the male ego, and she even interviewed men, and they even said it to her, you know. They said it incognito. They didn't give away their identity, because that would be, you know, if they did this, then they wouldn't be in that mental place in the first place. If they talked about this publicly, like showed their face and, hey, yeah, this is what I'm suffering from. The moment you talk about this, it's not happening anymore, because it is the very thing, this hiding themselves, coming back under a different name in order to make a comment. That is the very thing I'm talking about, is the saving your face by using someone else's face, by, using a mask, saving face by using a mask. That is exactly bringing this one subject to the point, to the absolute. It hits the nail on the head. That is exactly what they are doing. They're using a mask to save their face. And this is what we need to dissolve. And the men have it so much harder with this, because the dad, ignores the son, and as almost all dads do, they ignore their sons, they ignore their children, they don't spend enough time with them. And even when they do, and Henry Rollins has also talked about this, then when they do, then they are not really available psychologically to them. They don't listen to them. They talk about their own stuff. Sometimes they even talk about very inappropriate things to their sons that are just 10 years old. So because they're just into them, they're in their own world, they're in their own problems. They don't see the child, they don't see the child's needs. The child is more like a toy. It's like a trophy almost, I have a son. So, but they don't see the son. They don't see him for whom he is. He's a living being, and he's completely. T.L. Swan talked about this also. You know, your child is a completely different living being than you are, a completely new person. Sometimes they can have some of our characteristics and so on. They can have our character traits, they can have our physical characteristics, but it's still a complete, whole, new living being. And we need to be there for that other living being. People procreate and then they're not there for their children. Okay, that's another thing that Mirka wanted me to address. They're not there for their children. Another guy wrote to me today, you know, my whole life was misery in private message. I'm not going to reveal the identity, of course, but I think it's important that I talk about this, you know. His whole life was misery, and his wife cheated on him. He has a son, and he is completely lonely, feels totally lonely. Most men also mean loneliness in terms of not having sex. This is always this is a very annoying thing when that happens, when they confuse loneliness, or when they attribute loneliness, when they attribute sexual loneliness, to the word loneliness. So this is that's a terrible thing, because loneliness is not sexual loneliness. Real loneliness is a person in isolation, or a pig in a gestation crate. That's real loneliness, you know. That has nothing to do with any kind of sexual activity, or not even with sexual deprivation. Okay, a pig will be inseminated and have babies, but cannot even turn around herself in the gestation crates. That's what's happening in slaughter facilities. People don't know. They don't understand they don't understand how serious that is when they eat meat, or when they eat any animal product. They don't understand what kind of exploitation went into this. If you really understood how the animals are suffering in slaughter facilities and in factory farms, you could not possibly, if you really understand it, if you're really willing to let yourself understand it, you cannot continue to eat animal products. You just can't do it. That's not possible. So they are just as sentient as we are, but just equally sentient. Feel exactly the same thing, 100%. And so I see the loneliness. I see the loneliness in the pigs. It's killing me. It's like when I see this, I feel like I want to sedate myself or something, because it's so painful for me, you know, when I see innocent animals being exploited to that point, you know, or animals in laboratories, you know. I just can't stand it. I fall under my table. I've fallen under my table many times. I had a complete nervous breakdown on this, because I can't stand it. I just can't stand it. I can't take it. I just can't. I would just stand there all day long and say, I can't stand it. All day long, I will say this, crying my eyes out, and screaming sometimes. I can't stand it. I had a nervous breakdown over animal cruelty in 2012. All kinds of things came together, but it was the animal cruelty cases, and particularly the puppy doe case, that really brought me over the edge. I just can't stand it. I can't take it, you know. And the case of the dog in Nicaragua, it was too much for me. It was just too much. I suffered from this for years. It would just come back in flashbacks, and I would shake just by thinking about this. It's so incredibly horrific. And so when a person says something against that, you know, it doesn't matter who that person is. He can be total Republican asshole. You know, I will give him credit for saying something against that. And we should give each other credit for saying something good. Yeah. And not let our egos get in the way. The ego that wants to grandstand and all the time be the boss.